Well, good morning to everyone that has just joined us. And hello, if you are watching the replay, welcome to another one of our online learning webinars. This time it's all about Japanese knotweed, back to basics for professionals. I'm your host, Andy Ferguson. Today, joining me is my colleague, Daniel Dawkin, Technical Manager at the PCA. We are about to start the main presentation. For all those that are joining us, or for those that are watching the replay, if you do want to pose a question over the course of the webinar, then certainly I would point you firstly to the chat facility on the desktop. That'll be running down the left or the right hand side. On a mobile, that will just be at the bottom. There are alternative ways you can pose questions over the course of the webinar. You can directly email me at andy@property-care.org. That's andy@property-care.org. Or if you are so socially savvy, you can go to our social media tools, either Twitter, LinkedIn, or Facebook. Just use the native messenger tool that's within those apps and send us your message. So, Daniel, I can see that it is exactly bang on 9 o'clock. So, Japanese knotweed. Now, I know yourself and Peter are our residential experts when it comes to knotweed, and you could probably talk about knotweed in your sleep, I can imagine. But for all the other professionals out there, what is it that we really need to know? How do we identify it? And what should we be saying and telling our clients and customers? Some big questions, Daniel, and I suppose over to yourself, good sir.
Yes, they are big questions. So once again, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar for Japanese knotweed, back to basics for professionals. So once again, my name is Daniel Dawkin, and I'm the technical manager for the Property Care Association. So let's start moving on. So what we are told by the media. What a perfect entrance, considering the recent court cases which have come to light. Social media has a wonderful thing of exploiting sort of Japanese knotweed and making it sound sometimes a lot worse than what it is. But what do we see online? Well, we see Network Rail faces compensation bills worth millions. The alien shrub that can't be stopped. Leaf it out. Homeowners stuck with Japanese knotweed in their gardens could win compensation. And obviously the dreaded alien invader. Headlines like this is not uncommon. We see this a lot. And like anything, it can be seen as a slight exaggeration. Is it true? We'll discuss that in a little bit. But let's have a little bit of fun first of all. So, myth busting, Japanese knotweed. These are a lot of things which you'll see online. You'll speak to some people who've been dealing with their garden for years. And quite a lot when you're out surveying, you'll get some of these questions posed to you. So once again, the common myths about Japanese knotweed, which just aren't true. So Japanese knotweed can break through concrete. We hear this one a lot, and to be honest, this is probably the most common one which you will ever hear. As you can see in the picture on the right, we have some paving slabs, and the Japanese knotweed is not coming through the middle of the paving slabs or the concrete slabs. No, it's not. It's actually coming up through the weak points, and this is what Japanese knotweed does. It will find the weak points, and that's when it will pop up. Japanese knotweed is spread through the seeds, which are picked up by the birds. Well, that's just not true either. So what we do know is Japanese knotweed within the UK does not produce viable seeds. So once again, these birds which are picking them up and then transporting them everywhere, that just doesn't happen. It's illegal to have Japanese knotweed on your property. No, it's not. So it's completely fine to have Japanese knotweed on your property, same as any other invasive species. However, what you must do is ensure it doesn't become a nuisance, ensure that it doesn't spread into neighbouring properties, or ensure that it doesn't spread into the wild. Once again, it's not illegal to have Japanese knotweed. You can't get a mortgage if you have Japanese knotweed on your property. So a little bit of truth behind this one, to be totally honest. So if you are looking at trying to get a mortgage on your property and you have Japanese knotweed, then there can be a mortgage retention put in place. However, this can be easily remedied by having a professional contractor come through and an appropriate remediation plan put in place. You've just got to make sure you've got the correct insurances in place, and then you can quite easily get a mortgage on your property after that point. And this is probably my favorite. A mixture of diesel and fairy washing up liquid will get rid of it. Surprisingly, I heard this one quite a lot. Unfortunately, that one's just simply not true. With the price of diesel going through the roof as well, I probably wouldn't recommend using diesel to spray a big stand of knotweed, let alone the devastation, the biodiversity effects which it can have within the area. So once again, diesel, fairy washing up liquid, just doesn't quite cut it. So very briefly, we are going to go through the history of Japanese knotweed. So it originates from East Asia. It's a non-native plant introduced around about the 1850s. So female plants are the only ones within the UK. And a little fact that they are actually all clones of the original plant introduced to the UK. It spreads via the rhizome or stem regeneration. So when we talk about it spreading, all we need is a thumbnail worth of rhizome, and that has potential to cause regrowth. So really a small amount. So it's listed within the Wildlife Countryside Act 1981. That's one of the key legislations behind Japanese knotweed within the UK. And that is one of the legislations where we turn around and say, well, this is where we're not allowed to let it spread into the wild. And of course, within the early noughties, we saw the property blight. This is where we saw knotweed start to cause restrictions imposed by lenders, which unfortunately are still in place to this day. There has been changes in the RICS guidance that come last year. However, as we said, there are still restrictions in place to this day. So, how to identify knotweed? This is something which every surveyor needs to know, and I think homeowners should know this as well. It's really, really key to be able to identify knotweed. So we have the leaf material, the flowers, some of the stem material, and of course, depending on the time of year, it's the winter identification. You're not always going to be able to see the big, the nice leaf material, which you can identify from afar. Instead, within the winter, it's very, very different, and it can become very, very hard to identify Japanese knotweed, depending on the time of year. So the young shoots. So it is that time of year. We are in sort of late February, coming up to March, and already we are starting to see new shoots pop up. I've seen quite a few social media posts already. Everyone's showing off the new shoots. But what do we see? So we see small red, purple shoots with the leaves rolled back. It has an asparagus-like appearance. So if you look at the picture which just popped up, you can see it's very, very similar to asparagus, especially on some of the larger, mature stems, which will be arising this time of year. So when the shoots extend, they become a little bigger, the leaves begin to unfurl. Basically, all we mean is that they start to curl out slightly. And when the leaves are fully grown, they create a shield shape with a nice flat base. So this green colour is what we like to call a distinctive knotweed green. When you're out on site, there's very, very few plants of this type of coloration, and it's very, very distinctive. Even on going on Google Earth, you can go through some of the history, and you can actually identify knotweed through Google Earth simply because of the coloration of the plant. One of my key bits of advice for any surveyor is get to know the colour of this leaf. I said you'll be able to spot it an absolute mile off once you start to get your eye on and once you start to understand the colour behind it. So we are looking at roughly 13 centimetres in length. Once again, take this with a little bit of a pinch of salt. When you have big, mature, healthy stands, you can see sort of large leaf material like this. However, if it's been previously treated with herbicide, if we've got sort of fragmented rhizomes, if it's sort of a slightly younger overall plant, then we may see slightly smaller leaf material. But on a whole, mature, established plant, this is sort of roughly what we're looking at. So, bonsai or stunted forms. So this is not something which you will see on Google too often. So the leaves may change form if they've been subject to herbicide management or disturbed rhizome, or there is some type of damage to the rhizome. And fundamentally, what you can see in this picture is a really, really tight, small cluster of leaf material. And then just off in the background, you can kind of see the more traditional leaf, which you would associate with Japanese knotweed. Sometimes you can get something called persistent bonsai growth during a herbicide management plan. And this is where you'll see lots and lots of bonsai growth starting to grow. This can be quite hard to manage because the leaf material is so small, it doesn't take in a lot of herbicide. So if you do get to a stage within any type of remediation plan, or you see this form of growth, you've got to start to figure out how you can get it out of this type of growth and how you can get it to absorb more herbicide if that's the plan which you're going along. So as we said, it's tightly formed clusters of leaves and can cause difficulty in identification. Once again, if you are only looking for the normal traditional leaf material, you can quite easily miss this. And once again, if you're in a domestic property, you'll quite often maybe see these emerging amongst some paved flooring, and it just does not look like anything you would associate with Japanese knotweed. So it's really, really key that you start to understand not just the traditional knotweed as you would see, but bonsai and stunted forms as well. So the flower. So it's a creamy white in colour, and to be honest, in my opinion, it's an absolutely beautiful flower. I think it looks absolutely stunning. Forms clusters of flowers roughly 80 to 120 millimeters long. Once again, it is only the female plant for the flowers which are present within the UK. Just looking at the flower itself, you can really sort of understand why the Victorians thought this would be a good plant to bring over. It's absolutely stunning. So the stem material. So this is one of the key ways to identify Japanese knotweed. So we do have that distinctive green leaf. However, the stems are extremely key as well. So we have a zigzag stem appearance. So if you look at the picture to the side, you'll see, as we said, it's a zigzag. The leaves grow in an alternating pattern. So once again, on that zigzag, as we can see, you have the leaves growing on the right side, and then the next leaf will grow up on the left-hand side. You'll never get them alternating each other or directly opposite. You'll never get them sort of directly opposite each other. once again, just back onto them stems. So once they get a little bit more mature and they start to form the sort of bamboo-like cane, you'll start to get these green with purple speckles. Once again, this is another key identifiable feature within the spring, summer, sort of autumn period. It does have a hollow stem. Again, these mature stems form what we call canes like bamboo. As you can see from the picture which has just popped up, these canes start to cause sort of physical pressure sort of within the environment, and this is where you'll start to see sort of potential damage within, somewhat, as we say, the sort of built environment. So these stems can grow up to 3 meters in height. Once again, we take this with a slight pinch of salt. If we have a stand which is sort of been treated with herbicides before, if it has damaged rhizomes, we can start to expect a sort of slightly smaller growth. However, if it's been unmanaged, unchecked, and there's sort of no problems, it's growing sort of as it wants, the stem material can grow up to sort of around about 3 meters in height. So these do form dense colonies, and this is sort of what we call a monodominant stand and monodominant colony. And so what we mean by that is the Japanese knotweed sort of kind of outcompetes everything within the area, so virtually no other vegetation can grow. So it grows so tall, so quickly, it outshadows, it outcompetes everything, and once again it forms these really dense colonies. So winter identification, probably the hardest time to try and identify Japanese knotweed is within the winter. So you're not going to have any active aerial growth present. So as we spoke about earlier, that key knotweed green colour, that's not going to be present. The blotching on the stems and the canes, that's not going to be present. All you're going to have is these sort of tall brown stem material. So it's a deep brown to a woody beige in colour. So the longer these stems have been present, they start to change in colour themselves. So they start off in a deep brown, and then they, over the years, if they've been there sort of 2 to 3 years, they will start to lose their colour and they will turn into sort of like a very light woody beige. So the remnants of previous growth may be present, and I really want to highlight this when we say may be present, if it's left untouched. Once again, if we're talking about a domestic environment, it's highly likely that if there was any sort of mature growth present during the sort of spring, summer, the homeowner may decide to sort of chop down anything just to try and get their garden ready for that summer period. And that's completely normal, that's completely natural, as you would expect from any type of homeowner. So sometimes it can be really, really hard to identify, because you are going to get times where these canes are going to be cut down. But if they are there, it's a key identifiable feature within this winter period. As we said, it can be difficult to identify within the winter months. So, variants. So yes, we talk about Japanese knotweed being our primary focus, but there are some variants which we should be aware of. Like Japanese knotweed isn't bad enough, all of a sudden we've got these other ones as well. So these variants have similar properties to Japanese knotweed, however, can prove misidentification if not careful. So these variants are still subject to legislation, and it's really important to control these. So what variants are we talking about? Well, we are talking about giant knotweed first of all. So with giant knotweed, it is exactly as you would expect. It's sort of traditional Japanese knotweed, but it's a lot bigger. So instead of the 3 meters of traditional Japanese knotweed, this plant can grow up to 4 meters. The leaf material can grow up to a massive 40 centimeters compared to your normal traditional Japanese knotweed of being 30 centimeters. So that is a big difference between the two. So the leaves are slightly curled at the edges, and that's sort of, once again, let alone the size difference between the leaf material, that's a really good identifiable feature. The leaves have a slight indentation at the base of the leaf, so very much like bindweed. So with traditional Japanese knotweed, we expect a flat base, and once again, very much shield shape. However, giant knotweed has a slight indentation along the base. So we will still see the traditional tall cane-like material as what we associate with normal Japanese knotweed. So pretty much everything else is the same. However, as we said, it's just slightly taller. The leaves are a lot bigger. Bohemian or Bohemica. So this is such a really interesting one. So this is the cross between the Japanese knotweed and giant knotweed. So once again, if we're looking at that leaf material, sort of as we said, it kind of has properties of both of the parent plants. So what do we mean by that? So it has some of the normal size leaves, as what we would associate with your sort of traditional Japanese knotweed. And then sort of further up in the stem material, you'll actually see some of the really large leaves, which we associate with giant knotweed. So once again, this leaf material has that indentation very similar to giant knotweed. The coloration is slightly off as well, so it's not that sort of traditional sort of Japanese knotweed colour, that distinctive Japanese knotweed green, as what we said earlier. So it's slightly darker. And to be honest, it's actually rarely identified correctly. My personal experience, we tend to see sort of Bohemian knotweed sort of just thrown in sort of as normal knotweed, or maybe sort of just as sort of giant knotweed. It is quite difficult to identify Bohemian, so you've really got to sort of be aware. However, one of the key things so you've got to understand is it's still knotweed. It should still be treated with the same premise. So one thing we do find with Bohemian knotweed as well, it's a little bit more persistent, it's a little bit more hardy. So when you are looking at a herbicide management plan for Bohemian, you may want to sort of add on a little bit of extra time, just because, as I said, it can be a little bit more persistent than sort of traditional Japanese knotweed. So, still not sure how to identify Japanese knotweed. Well, okay, I did fly through that maybe a little bit too quick, but once again, like anything, it takes time to get your eye in. It's not easy to identify Japanese knotweed, especially if people have been cutting it down. It's quite hard to identify. Within the winter period, it's very hard to identify. Even sort of within this early spring period, with the new growths popping up, it can be really difficult to identify. So what other options do we have? So here's a little bit further advice. So Japanese knotweed and its variants can be difficult. So here are our options. Of course, engage with a professional contractor. So many professional contractors out there supply a free identification service. If you're out and about and you're not 100% sure, take a picture. Once again, a lot of them have WhatsApp, a lot of them you can email a picture across. Get their advice. They are professional contractors, they know what they're looking for. If you're not 100%, once again, use these professionals. Use plant ID apps. Okay, so there are pros and cons to using plant ID apps. Find a plant which you feel is Japanese knotweed. As in the images which you can see, which has popped up, there's loads of plant ID apps. So install one of them, take a picture of the plant, and it will bring up what it feels is the correct identification for that plant. It's fantastic. However, please be aware that a lot of these plant ID apps, they're user verified. So once you take a picture of that plant, it'll bring up a load of plants, of other plants. You have to select what plant you feel it fits in with. So if you get a bit of a dodgy picture and something's not quite right, the app can actually lead you down completely the wrong direction. So they are fantastic. However, they are not as efficient as maybe trying to use a professional contractor, trying to engage with a professional contractor. Not too long ago at the Invasive Weed Conference, Mark Fennell did an amazing presentation on plant identification apps. So I would fully recommend that if you are interested and you do use plant identification apps. So I believe Andy Wood has typed a link into the chat box, or once again, you can drop him a message and sort of ask for that link. So it is on the Property Care Association website within the conference. So go and watch that that conference, and Mark will sort of explain the pros and cons behind it. And actually, even better, kind of they've done a study to show how reliable some of these plant identification apps are. So as you would expect, not every app is built the same, and some apps are better than others. So once again, I really sort of reiterate, if you are going to use plant ID apps, use them with a pinch of salt, and obviously go onto the Property Care Association website and sort of have a watch of the video. But most importantly, if you're unsure, don't ignore it. There is nothing worse than ignoring Japanese knotweed or any other invasive plant, to be totally honest. They are invasive for a reason, and if they are left to their own devices, then they will get worse. So once again, if you are unsure, you've got to do something. You really must, once again, engage with a professional contractor, use plant ID apps. There are Facebook groups for Japanese knotweed. Jump in one of them and put a picture in there, which there'll be professionals within that group. But once again, there will be sort of just your normal people who may be able to misidentify knotweed. So kind of really take things, as I said, I keep using this phrase, but use it with a pinch of salt. Just be careful. I would always recommend, once again, engaging with a professional contractor. Instead, they can supply you with a free identification service, which is absolutely fantastic. So, tips for surveyors. This bit was actually quite fun for me, to be totally honest, because this is my background, being out in the field and trying to find areas of Japanese knotweed. And it's just sort of something which I've learned over the years. So part one for our tips for surveyors. So first of all, don't be led by the client or the homeowner. It's such a key thing to remember. So many a time what you'll find, you'll be out in a property, or maybe you'll be on a commercial development site, and whoever's your client will be leading you across, and yes, we found this stand of Japanese knotweed. Fantastic. What about anything else? No, we haven't found anything else. Okay, no problem. So you sort of write your stand, you write all your information for that area of Japanese knotweed, and then you walk away. Who's the expert? Well, it's supposed to be you. So don't be led by the client, because what you'll tend to find is you walk around a little bit more and you find a little bit popping up here, a little bit popping up over there. And that's because that's once again, the client has just seen the big main stand of Japanese knotweed. So it's really, really important. Don't be client-led. Once again, if you're going to go do a survey, go out, be thorough, make sure that you are checking all of the areas. It's fantastic if the client decides to show you one stand of knotweed. Fantastic, because that's one less stand for you to find. But me, I always turn around and say, if the client has found one, I want to find at least one more. So be aware of areas recently cleared of vegetation or landscaped. So in the picture which you can see, which has just popped up, we have what we call a relatively sort of unkept garden. You can see a lot of the weeds sort of in the paved floor, emerging the grass lawn, sort of is quite mucky. It's not massively well kept. However, if you go over towards the far corner, all of a sudden, all of the weeds have gone from the paved flooring. That should be a trigger. Why is that area cleared? Well, after a little bit of investigation, moved one of the slabs, Japanese knotweed was present. That's right. As I said, this has got to be a trigger for yourselves. Start to understand where the plant would be growing and where it wouldn't be. But once again, you've got to be fully aware. The taboo which comes with Japanese knotweed, no one really wants it on their property. So if you can try and hide it, a lot of people will do. So once again, it's really important. So just look around. Is that area cleared? Why is it cleared? Why has the whole area been landscaped? You'll find a lot of times when they do complete property renovations, they'll clear absolutely everything, and then they'll do the garden as well, and it's just a grass lawn. Okay, that's fantastic, but when you're going through and surveying, all of a sudden you can't see nothing. So maybe it's time to drop into the alleyway, have a look in the alleyway, because 9 times out of 10 they wouldn't be clearing the alleyway. Then all of a sudden you'll start to find maybe little bits of Japanese knotweed popping up. So once again, be really aware of areas recently cleared or landscaped. Don't be afraid to check the neighbouring properties. So, I mean, as we know, Japanese knotweed does like to jump from one property to the next, and it doesn't discriminate between boundaries. But however, you've got to be fully aware that if you've got a stand of Japanese knotweed just off to the side and you're only surveying your client's property, you may miss a stand of Japanese knotweed. Just because it's not tall and towering over the fence doesn't mean it's not there. So where you can, try and check neighbouring properties. Don't get me wrong, you're not always going to be able to do that. However, if you can knock on a door, if you can sort of peer over and find some and look over that neighbouring fence, sort of where applicable, I really would recommend to sort of check the neighbouring properties. That's really, really important. So part 2 of it, understand the plant, understand the environment it likes to grow within, and understand the type of growth which you should be seeing for the time of year which you're surveying. So once again, within the winter period, we wouldn't expect to see any of the traditional knotweed green leaf material. We would expect to see that winter identification and then winter canes, or if it's chopped down, maybe just some crown material. Once again, spring, around about this late February, March, we'll start to see sort of young shoots, that asparagus-like stem material start to pop up. We get into that summer period, we should really start to see this sort of traditional knotweed green. So understand what type of growth you should be seeing. It's another fantastic one for me. Japanese knotweed doesn't climb or wrap around other plants. So within the image below, you can actually see knotweed, but we actually see bindweed as well. And sometimes when you're having your discussions with your client, you will hear them say, oh, the knotweed's climbing over my fence, it's wrapping itself around my rose bush or whatever. Triggers. These are triggers where you can start to think to yourself, okay, well, Japanese doesn't climb, doesn't wrap. So it's a self-sufficient stand. And we've got this bamboo-like cane material. So once again, it's tall growth up by itself. So if you're starting to hear these triggers of climbing, wrapping, sort of stuff like that, once again, start to think to yourself, is it Japanese knotweed, or could it be a misidentification? Once again, misidentification is not a problem, but make sure that you have still surveyed properly and taken your time. part 3. My final tip for surveyors, and probably most important, take your time and get stuck in. Look, if you're unlucky enough to enter into a site like the image which you can see, then you are going to have to take your time, and you really are going to have to get stuck in. But that should be your motto every time you turn up onto a site. Take your time and get stuck in. It's really, really hard to try and survey knotweed when you're rushing. What you should really do, as we said, take your time, move around, make sure you can identify it where you can. Take your time. So discussions with your client. So advising your client that they may have Japanese knotweed, it's an uncomfortable discussion to have. However, we have 3 golden rules. Don't panic. Yes, that's the first thing they normally do. Don't ignore it, because that's tends to be what they do next. They'll put their head in the sand and just pretend it's not there. But don't Google it. As we all know, if you Google anything, everything is 20 times worse. We sort of proved that from literally our first slide of today. Tell them, don't panic, don't ignore it, don't Google it. So tips if you have Japanese knotweed. So once again, if it's within your property, if it's within a workplace, rental, or sort of anywhere else. I'm going to say this again, engage with a professional contractor for advice, survey, potential remediation plan. Once again, they are professionals for a reason. They really know what they're doing. So it's really, really important to sort of try and use their expertise. Listen, if you're self-treating, then ensure you've done your homework, okay? We are living, at this point in time, a cost of living crisis, and sometimes we decide we need to self-treat. There's nothing necessarily wrong about that, but once again, this can lead to complications if you haven't done your homework. There's some fantastic information out there, especially on the PCA website with our sort of code of practice and other bits and pieces. So do your homework, know when you should be treating, once again, what you should be looking for. Engage with your neighbours where needed. Once again, this is something which I've already discussed about sort of in one of our tips. So if you've got knotweed directly on the boundary and you're only treating one side, well, it's never really going to go away. But if you can engage with your neighbour, then a problem shared could be a problem halved. The impacts of Japanese knotweed. So structural impacts. So Japanese knotweed does have the capacity to cause structural impacts within the built environment. However, these are often due to several factors. So there normally is a pre-existing damage or weakness to that structure. So once again, we're looking at a foundation which may already have cracks within it. A lack of management to the Japanese knotweed infestation. So if there's knotweed there and you're managing it, then it's highly unlikely that it's going to be penetrating any weaknesses within foundations or sort of or anything like that. Or a development on top of an already established Japanese knotweed infestation. So as you can see with the picture which has just popped up, someone decided to try and do a homemade build to the concrete foundation. I mean, it was a very poor attempt in the first place. However, it was directly on top of a knotweed stand. Once again, if you combine all of these 3, this is probably where you're going to get some type of structural impacts. But once again, identifying and managing any infestation is key. Domestic and social impacts. So it has a large domestic and social impact which should not be underestimated. So amenity loss within gardens, and sort of we're going to focus on this with the RICS guidance in a little bit. But that amenity loss, you've got knotweed within your garden, how it's affecting. Are you able to use that grass lawn now? Are you able to use that flower bed like you wanted to? Development restrictions. So once again, if you've got it within your garden and you're looking at building an extension, you've got it in your front garden, you're trying to tarmac your driveway, there are restrictions in place now because once again, it's controlled waste. We've got to be fully aware of it. And once again, we don't want to build directly on top of a knotweed infestation, as stated in the previous slide. So that potential for property value diminishment. Unfortunately, there is this social taboo with Japanese knotweed, and once again, this property value diminishment is ever present. These potential mortgage restrictions, as we discussed earlier, it's highly likely that you're going to have some type of mortgage restriction. However, with the right remediation plan, this can be alleviated. But once again, it comes back to that engaging with professional contractors. Once again, this social taboo with neighbours. I think many of the sort of Japanese knotweed surveyors out there can sort of reiterate this fact. The amount of times you turn up to site and they say, "Can you please park a road away, or can you not wear any logoed clothing?" So there is this social taboo. You don't want, for some reason, you don't want your neighbours to know, which is counterintuitive, because especially with knotweed, if it is sort of splitting across boundaries, it's really important to sort of try and get everyone involved. So commercial development impacts. So knotweed does have the potential to bring the construction site to a halt, or at least the construction area to a halt. But what do we need to consider? Well, that risk of potential spread. You've got diggers, dumpers, and everything flying about through a knotweed stand, or when they try and level the site and they level the knotweed with it, all of a sudden we've got knotweed potentially absolutely everywhere. This restriction to development plans. Once again, you're building within the area. The restriction all of a sudden is being implemented. Potential halt to development around the infested area. Once again, as we said, we don't want that spread. If it begins to spread, the situation becomes even worse. But most importantly, the additional financial impact. A lot of construction sites, commercial sites, are already on their budgets. They don't need an extra lump sum to remove Japanese knotweed. So once again, if we can get in there early and we can make sure that we deal with that at the very beginning rather than after they've spread it everywhere, financially that'll be a lot better for them as well. So we are going to talk about the change in the RICS guidance, the RICS guidance, or as it's now called, the professional standard for Japanese knotweed, because there has been an update. So what's changed? So a shift of focus towards amenity value loss. So before it was sort of anything within 7 meters of your habitable space, worst case scenario. However, now it's a focus on amenity value. So is it affecting how you can use your property? Can you use that grass lawn? Can you use that flower bed? So as we discussed earlier. This reduced dependency for off-site Japanese knotweed management. So once again, before it was always, if there was knotweed within 7 meters of your boundary, then a mortgage restriction would be implemented. However, that's not the case anymore, which we will be discussing in a little bit. So once again, just briefly, a change in guidance from the traditional 1 to 4, or 4 to 1, I should say, to A to D. But most importantly, I think is professional opinion and experience can be used to help define these categories. Before, I said it was anything within 7 meters of habitable space, that's your category. It didn't matter if you had a forest coming out of your foundation wall or a single stem at 6.9 meters, that was still a category 4 worst case scenario, which kind of doesn't seem quite right in a lot of circumstances. But most importantly, it helps change narrative surrounding Japanese knotweed. So hopefully a year on, well, almost a year on now, we're starting to see a change in narrative around Japanese knotweed. So what are the new categories? So we have management category A. So if damage has occurred in either structural features, hard landscape features, which are within the immediate surrounding area of the subject building. So in the image, as you can see, we've got knotweed within the patio area. Knotweed is growing through the patio. So once again, it's starting to cause that sort of damage, and the patio is sort of starting to go up and down slightly. So it's caused some problems within that immediate area. So this is what we classify as a category A. So Japanese knotweed, once again, it has to be on site. Once again, it's still affecting that amenity value due to its location. So within that patio area, it starts to cause damage and it's an amenity value. And what we should say is action should be taken immediately. A professional RICS valuer may consider a mortgage retention until a specialist Japanese knotweed plan is implemented. So once again, so this is really sort of what we classify as an action category. So management category B, what we are looking at, there's no damage to structural or hard landscape features within that immediate area. But Japanese knotweed is on site and it's affecting amenity value. So once again, we're looking at this picture. We've got Japanese knotweed within the flower bed, within the shrub bed, and within the grass lawn. The homeowner of this property now can't use that immediate area because they've got to be fully aware if they sort of mow any of the knotweed within the grass lawn, they're going to make it spread. They can't plant flowers within that immediate area. So it's affecting their amenity value. But once again, what we say is it's an action category, so action should be taken immediately. So a professional RICS valuer may consider a mortgage retention until a specialist Japanese knotweed plan is implemented. Category C. So if you have the luxury of living in a lovely house like this, and you've got a nice big woodland garden, we've got sort of Japanese knotweed off in the woodland, and we can see there's no structural or hard landscape damage or anything like that. So it's off in the woodland, Japanese knotweed is on site, but it's not affecting that amenity value due to its location. But we should consider management. So the RICS valuer may not consider a mortgage retention. However, we would still suggest engaging with a specialist knotweed company. Once again, between category B and category C, what we can look at is this experience and this opinion, because this can be quite blurred. Category A is quite defined because there is damage, that's it. But category B and C comes down to this professional opinion and where its location, is it going to affect the amenity value? So it's really, really important to sort of weigh up these options. Category D. So Japanese knotweed is off-site only. So one thing, it's not on site, but it is within 3 meters of the boundary. But Japanese knotweed may be affecting sort of the amenity value slightly, but it could just be the rhizome growth is sort of what we anticipate. So as long as it's off-site only, there's no growth on site, it's what we classify as category D. Sort of what we do recommend, though, is defensive measures put in place. There may not be a mortgage retention implemented. However, we should be fully aware of it. We should be reporting it. We should be maybe putting a root barrier in or trying to do something. So we're just going to understand these remediation strategies very quickly. But there are 2 basic forms of remediation. So there are herbicide control, excavation, eradication. So these are for your professionals, to be totally honest. Herbicide should be considered as a control method. It may take several years before we see no visible growth. Larger infestations can take longer. It quickly reduces the plant's capacity to spread. So once again, we don't want that spreading to neighbouring properties or anywhere else. Disturbance of the soil is not permitted. So once again, if you're using a herbicide control measure, let's not dig, okay? Really can't be doing that. But it is ideal for in situ management where there's no development plans or landscaping plans forecasted. Once again, it's a perfect control method. And it's likely to be the most cost-effective management method. Excavation. So excavating the Japanese knotweed infested soil removes these limitations. So you can dig it, you can do what you want with the site. You can develop the site if you want to. Be screened, stockpiled, created into a bund, cell burial, just completely removed from site. However, it is higher costings compared to herbicide control method. Once again, you're removing it from sites, using machinery. It's a lot more laborious. But it is ideal for areas where you're going to be developing or landscaping. But it should be undertaken by a competent professional. And I use the word competent very, very harshly because, to be totally honest, many a time we see sort of people who say, I can deal with the knotweed. when they haven't got the competence, they haven't got the experience to do it. So really ensure that you've got a competent contractor. Once again, I'm going to say this: a PCA sort of approved contractor should be able to remove any knotweed for excavation. DIY. So as we said earlier, so engaging with a professional should always be advised. However, cost of living crisis, money, whatever, sometimes it's not always the way. So what we recommend is read the PCA code of practice, understand what suitable treatments are. Simply covering knotweed will not get rid of the problem. So sticking your head in the sand, putting a cover over the top, that's not going to do it. If you're going to be using domestic herbicides, keep a record of when you treat, how often you do it. It's really, really important to keep records. But most importantly, DIY treatments do not absolve you from your obligation of ensuring the plant doesn't spread. Listen, once again, it's really important to make sure that you manage everything moving forward. So finally, knotweed in summary. So Japanese knotweed doesn't have to be the big bad plant which can ruin your house or development plans. However, it does need to be carefully managed to ensure the plant doesn't spread further onto site, neighbouring properties, affect development plans, or once again, as we use this term, into the wild. Early identification and management is key to reduce the impact of infestations. Remember, the most important rule of them all: don't ignore the problem. Thank you very much for listening today, and I'll pass you back across to Andy.
Oh, sorry, folks. There, I was waiting for the thank you slide to actually come up, ready for my cue to actually just jump on there.
There we go.
You caught me out just a little bit. But here, Daniel, many thanks for that presentation. I mean, certainly from my perspective, I mean, it certainly got me back up to speed in certain areas. Hopefully the audience agrees. But folks, I know that time is against us here at the moment in time, so I'm going to quickly just rush on to questions. Daniel, I would ask if you can try and keep the answers as short as you can, because we've got quite a lot and a very limited time to kind of answer. Now, the first question I'm going to ask you is actually a little bit potentially controversial, as it's a question regarding lesser knotweed that, to the best of my knowledge, is not listed in the Wildlife and Country Act 1981. The question is, if lesser knotweed is identified, do the same procedures to risk assessment and eradication still apply?
Okay, so regards to the RICS, their statement is sort of Japanese knotweed ends variants. With that in principle, yes, everything is the same. However, regards to sort of general management, lesser knotweed is a lot less persistent. So my recommendation is still manage it, still move forward with it. However, once again, it's just not as persistent as what we would associate with traditional knotweed, giant knotweed, or Bohemica.
Is it not the case, though, that with Schedule 9 we need to be careful with the advice that we kind of give just on this, just because it's not part of the Wildlife and Country Act? Or I suppose, just getting back to that route, can we still treat it the same?
So we should still be treating it the same. So the Countryside and Wildlife Act is only applicable for when we're sort of dealing with knotweed in the wild, so to speak. Once again, domestic properties, it's a little bit different because the term behind it is you're not allowed to spread it into the wild. If we are spreading it into a neighbouring property, technically that's not the wild. The wild is once again defined as maybe a forestry or something else. So there are certain grey areas which sort of loop in and out each other. So you may go from Countryside and Wildlife Act to sort of common law when sort of spreading across neighbouring boundaries. And once again, RICS have their risk assessment. So it's sort of jumping in of all other bits and pieces. The way I look at it is knotweed, no matter what the variants are. Some are going to be a little bit more hardy and more persistent. Some are going to be less persistent. We should realistically try and be dealing with it all the same. All
righty. Well, an interesting question that Sarah Phillips posed. I'm intrigued myself on this one. And it's a question that they get asked on a regular basis, which is, If knotweed has been treated and there's a treatment plan in place, it is controlled, and there is no visible signs of growth, can you ever replant in that area?
No. So if it's a control method and it's herbicide control, it's a no dig period. You do have the risks of disturbing that rhizome if you're going to be planting within that area. So it really is a sort of herbicide is a in situ, no development plan type thing. So we've got to be really, really careful of what we do with that moving forward. Once again, if you're doing it by yourself and you decide you want to plant bits within the knotweed area, you may see some regrowth, and that's completely fine. What I would then recommend is sort of just covering the new plants which you've planted, and then carry on spraying. However, if you are using a professional contractor, they will just periodically just say no digging, no planting at all.
All right. Well, next question comes from Robert McDonald, and it requires a little bit of crystal ball gazing for yourself here. So, I mean, it's with regards to controls in the future. Now, he's asking, do you think chemical control will continue to be an option and potentially the principal method of control in the future? And I suppose that kind of ties on with the controversial talks of glyphosate and restrictions and stuff. I mean, what's your thoughts here?
Okay, so I'm probably going to go on maybe a little bit longer than a minute on this one.
Okay.
So without my crystal ball in front of me, to be totally honest, we already know at the moment that glyphosate and herbicide management is the most effective way to manage knotweed in situ. That's established, and that's fine. So moving forward, there are some new ways of coming forward. So there has been a root wave, which we see, which is basically sort of electrocuting the knotweed. But there's sort of been one where me and Peter, the other technical manager, we had a meeting not too long ago where it was talking about sort of basically sort of resetting the soil structure, and it would sort of destroy all the knotweed rhizomes, and which is really interesting. But the problem is with all of these new methods coming forward, there's no long-term studies into it. So it's all well and good saying, yes, I've got no growth sort of at this point in time. But if that only counts for 2 years, if we're going to talk about mortgage lenders who are lending on properties for 30, 35 years, they really want to see sort of long-term studies before they start to sort of approve to a certain point of other remediation methods. So at this point in time, we know herbicides work. However, there are some more sort of organic, sort of plant-based herbicides as well. So sort of pedogonic acids and sort of bits and pieces like that, which are being developed. I've been talking to someone else recently. I can't go into it. I'm actually not allowed to, regarding to some new herbicide being developed, which is knotweed specific, but not glyphosate. So that could be really, really interesting for the future as well. But there's so many different things out there. But at this point in time, I still see glyphosate as being our main one. However, what I do recommend is sort of being clever with it. So we don't need to spray glyphosate at its maximum dosage 5 times a year or whatever. We have studies which show, and actual scientific studies, not sort of industry anecdotal sort of evidence. We're talking about scientific studies which say we know knotweed is best treated by glyphosate sort of within that sort of autumn period. And this is proof. So if we can sort of do that and reduce our dependency on the amount of glyphosate and the amount of chemical which we're using, fantastic. But at the moment, for me, that's our only viable way forward.
Yeah, and I think if memory serves me, was it not just a couple of months ago, there was that experiment that was taking place with the different treatments over in Wales. And I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong here, I believe glyphosate came on top, wasn't it? The chemical was still the most notable and best way for kind of moving forward. Am I wrong in saying this?
Yeah, no, that's correct. So obviously at the invasive weed conference, we had a presentation, and it showed the presentation showed that sort of glyphosate is still the best way, not only sort of the best way in controlling it so far, but also the most sort of economical, because once again, as companies and sort of anyone is going to know, then it's really important. If you're going to have a knotweed stand and it's going to cost you whatever 5,000 to treat, and then you've got this other method which is going to cost you 20,000 to try and treat it, we know what way councils are going to have to go to a certain point, because it does boil back down to money, of course.
Well, again, by the way, folks, just to let you know, we are slightly running over time. We'll try and be as quick as possible. Just got a couple more questions for you, Daniel. I think just continuing on this treatment, but Graham Miller is asking, is it illegal to spray or treat Japanese knotweed that is potentially on your neighbour's property? That's maybe a bit... Ooh. You know, what, I mean, I would imagine that is illegal because that's someone else's land. Yes. You know, I get that he sees that as a threat potentially going across to his land. I mean, really, is this just a case of boiling down, chat to your neighbour, communicate?
Yeah. That is exactly it. Yeah. So it is someone else's land. You're not allowed to just go and spray knotweed. Even if it is knotweed, you're not allowed to just go and spray it without having that discussion with them. But once again, this boils back down to go and talk to your neighbour and say, look, kind of, we've got knotweed, both of us, because it's a double-edged sword. It is both of you have got it. Even if you've got nothing on your site, it's highly likely that you can maybe have some rhizomes coming across. So it's really important to sort of have that conversation and just be like, look, we've got knotweed, we need to spray it together. Can I have your permission? And once again, making sure that if you're using professional grade herbicides, that you've got the relevant sort of competence and training certificates, so the PA1, PA6. If you are using professional herbicides, once again, making sure that you are sticking to sort of product label and the amount, because spraying too much chemical on knotweed can actually have an adverse effect and not do what you want, which we see sort of over years of sort of industry knowledge, where you spray too much and all of a sudden knotweed goes into a long dormancy period, which is not what you want. So it's really a case of understanding the plant and just dealing with it and talking to your neighbours.
Well, again, sorry, Daniel, to put you under pressure here, but I'm going to try and hit you with two questions if you can, but quickly answer. The first one is actually to do with the plant ID apps. Now, I know we kind of briefed on it, you mentioned it during the presentation there. The question is, can you actually recommend any that you feel was half decent? Now, I think if memory serves, from Mark Fennell, I think it was the PlantNet and the Plant Snap were found to be the better ones. Again, am I wrong here, or do any other ones jump out?
So they were the best ones, and my personal opinion, PlantNet is the best. I have used PlantNet in the past for sort of other bits and pieces, and it's really, really good, to be totally honest. Don't get me wrong, when you start to find some sort of weird and wonderful plants, it does start to deviate a little bit, but once again, as we spoke about, it's user verified, so kind of there is always this room for error. But PlantNet for me is an absolute must. If you're out and about and you are surveying, whether you're a RICS value surveyor, whether you're a knotweed surveyor or whatever you do, if you're out and you're looking at plants, PlantNet is the one to have, in my opinion.
Okay, well, there you go, folks. Well, last question, and this is almost quite open-ended, but I'm going to press you to try and keep it short. But Johanna Rees, and is asking, and this relates to the new RICS guidance in Japanese knotweed. We know to a certain degree how it impacts residential properties, but how does this new guidance affect us in terms of commercial property in the commercial sector? Is it just the same, or is it... Oh, sorry, you were a bit to answer them. My apologies.
So regards to the commercial sector, it doesn't affect it at all. So the RICS guidance is literally for domestic properties, and it's fundamentally it's a risk assessment for mortgage retention, for a mortgage lender. That is very, very different when you are looking at commercial settings. So if you are going off on a commercial site, a development site, you don't need to sort of implement this sort of RICS risk assessment. It's good to have, don't get me wrong, it's good to use that. However, would recommend you don't really need to have it. I think it's just good to just keep it across the board, but just be aware it doesn't affect commercial properties. It's mainly for domestics.
All right. Well, here, Daniel, many thanks for those questions, folks. I appreciate there's some questions we didn't get to kind of answer there. And we'll try and tidy up those questions maybe in the show notes or something like that, just on the page. But for anyone that wants to find more information, there is a variety of sources that you can go on to via the PCA website. You can go on via our professional pages where you'll find a whole wealth of information, whether it be with regards to Japanese knotweed, but also to a whole host of other invasive weeds. It's broken down both for professionals and also for homeowners. The bulk of people here suspect you're professionals. All you need to do is effectively go to the link I've just shared just within the chat there, and you can find that. But there is also as well, we have a whole library of technical documents, and that ranges from things such as our code of practice to the management of Japanese knotweed to guidance for professional valuers and surveyors. There's homeowners guides there as well, site report guides for Japanese knotweed, and also guidance in terms of the use of root barriers for Japanese knotweed. Link is on the screen for that one as well. But also if you do want to learn more via video, there is a whole video library there as well, with not only Japanese knotweed related videos, but also as well other invasive weed sector videos. Again, on the link in the chat that I've just sent can take you to all of that. Of course, as well, and for those that have been watching the chat, this replay will be available over the next couple of days. For those that are really interested and want to learn more and hungry to learn more, there are training courses you can go on to. The list is there, starting from our flagship training courses such as the Surveyor training course for management of Japanese knotweed. We also have the technician-based courses. Both of these are classroom and online-based. There is our identification courses and also cell burial courses. And if you are a PCE member, I would encourage you to go into the safe and sustainable use of herbicides. It's completely free to you, and it's frankly a tiny amount for non-members as well. The link is just on the screen for you. Just a quick shout out to our conference, which is all the way in the 16th of November. I know it's quite a while away. We do have early bird tickets available for that. The link to it is on the screen. If you are keen on learning more about not only Japanese knotweed, but everything invasive weed, this is the place to be. So just before kind of finishing off, next webinar coming up on the 30th of March. We are switching back to kind of dampness, hidden dampness, how unsuspecting surveyors can be caught out. If you're a student or a newbie in terms of the damp industry, or a surveyor or a property professional hungry to learn more and gain some tips, this is a webinar that certainly I would encourage you to go on. Finally, I just want to say firstly to yourself, Daniel, a big thank you for that presentation and sharing that knowledge. To everyone that tuned in today as well, a big thank you for tuning in. I hope you got some real value, information and insight. And lastly, to everyone on the call, I hope you have a lovely rest of the day, and hopefully we see you on the next webinar on the 30th of March. Take care, everyone, and goodbye.
Bye.